Good morning, good afternoon. If you're joining us from Lisbon with all the ocean activities going on there, put something in the chat. But from what I've seen in LinkedIn, you're too busy. You're going from one meeting to another, and enjoy your time in Lisbon. I'm Millicent Pitts. I'm the Executive Director of Ocean Exchange. Welcome to our quarterly webcast in conjunction with the Marine Technology Society. Ocean Exchange is a platform to advance the adoption of innovative solutions for healthy oceans, resilient coastal systems. Plus, we have some special focus on sustainable shipping and ports. You see some of our sponsors on that first slide, and we couldn't do any of this without our sponsors. Our big news today, of course, is that our call for solutions is open now, and it's open until August the 29th. We seek startups that have innovative solutions that can address the challenges put forth in these three awards. This year, we've announced a third $100,000 award focused on transportation hubs with a great emphasis on ports, but not ocean ports and major river ports, but not limited to that. And I encourage you to go to our website and check that out. Next slide, Alice. I'm going to turn it over to Zdenka Willis of the Marine Technology Society. Thank you, Zdenka.
Great. And Millie, great to be back with you. It's hard, as you said, we're only here once a quarter. So very briefly, MTS was established in 1963 on the premise that it's important to foster advances in marine science and technology that benefits humankind and contributes to the sustainability of the planet Earth. We have individual, corporate, and institutional members in 20 countries. MTS connects our members to our professional committees and sections. Our sections include our geographical and early career ocean professionals and student sections. We host a host of events also. We're looking forward to our events through the fall. Our next event is our Women Leadership in Technology and Science webinar, and it's going to focus women issues in the field on the July 13th. In September, we actually will host two events. The first is our 14th year of our buoy workshop. That'll take place September 19 to 22 in Wilmington, North Carolina. And the next one is the next Lakebed 2030 conference that will be held both virtually and in person, 28 to 30 September in Traverse City, Michigan. In October, we'll return to Hampton Roads, Virginia for Oceans 2022. The local organizing committee is hard at work putting together a great conference, so we ask you to spread the word, and we hope that we'll see you from 17 to 20 October. MTS is a catalyst, and I want to continue to highlight our Chartered Marine Technology Certification Program, and please come to the MTS website for information on how you can apply. We certainly embrace communications, and I want to know that this month of the ocean and in concert with the UN Decade Ocean Conference, our journal this month is focused on the United Nations Ocean Decade, and it is free access to all. So I look forward to another great panel. So over to you, Dane, to get us going. Thank you.
Thanks, Zinka. Hi, everybody. Dane Dunstan. Very excited to be here for a couple of reasons. I think the timing of today's webcast is really interesting, but I'm even more excited about what we're going to be showing you today. I often refer to a book by Jared Diamond, who is a professor at UCLA. He wrote a book called Collapse, which is about earlier environmental collapses that destroyed societies. And somebody asked him once why he wrote the book. And his answer was interesting. He was teaching a class when a young woman raised her hand. The subject of the class was Easter Island. And if you remember Easter Island, that's the island where they made these beautiful, beautiful statues. And it was a very simple reason. They made these statues for religious reasons, but also as a contest. That contest helped them avoid wars. That's what they did. It was a brilliant social solution. And the way they would move these giant statues was on rolling logs. They would have hundreds of people moving these things along on the logs. One side effect of that was that they deforested the island. And so this student raised her hand and asked Professor Diamond, what do you think they were thinking when they cut down the last tree? And the answer was simple. We don't know what they were thinking, but it destroyed their culture. We've seen so many times when we have, as human beings, destroyed our culture, destroyed our environment, and had to live through that. We're at one of those moments now. Hopefully we've learned from history, but the truth is we tend not to be very good at learning from history. So I'm very, very happy that everybody's in Lisbon. We're having this huge conference and that so much attention is on the problems here. Can we change? Absolutely. And that's what today is about. While a lot of these conferences have a lot of talk, today we've got some action. We need to work with the oceans, not against them. All of the solutions that we're doing, the ocean is a big, big part of it. 21% of effectiveness in reducing carbon emissions over the next few years is going to come from ocean-based solutions. And that's what we've got today. So we're just going to look at how we now can learn from history and how we're learning and what's going on. And I'm very, very excited to introduce Crystal Pruitt, who leads the Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind Program. We were talking before we got on, and just very exciting to me that this is a wonderful, wonderful project that's happening. This is going on now, and the effects, as you're about to see, are going to be huge. So Crystal, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself in time. But yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, Dane. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Crystal Pruitt, and I am External Affairs Lead for Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind. And as you can see, I have some prior experience at the Board of Public Utilities, and before that, I was a Chief of Staff for a state legislator here in the state of New Jersey. And then, when I have time, I am also a councilwoman in where I live here in New Jersey. So before we move on to the first slide, or actually let's move on to the slide. So I wanted to talk about the green economy. I know you guys referred to it as the blue economy. So apologies, I mixed up the colors. But before we get into it, just for a frame of reference for those who may not know who Atlantic Shores is, Atlantic Shores is a 50-50 partnership between Shell New Energies and EDF Renewables North America. It's really exciting because these two entities can really leverage their knowledge in the energy and clean energy industries for this project, which is introducing offshore wind off the coast of New Jersey. In June of 2021, we were awarded a wind contract to develop about 1,500 megawatts offshore in wind energy, and that's enough to power about 700,000 homes. And it's the largest single project here in the state of New Jersey, and at the time currently third largest in the United States. So I wanted to give folks a little bit of frame of reference of what I'm going to be talking about. And when we talk about the economy, we're going to be talking a lot about workforce and the benefits to the state of New Jersey. And for me, I think the best way to kind of talk about those economic benefits is through the frame of reference of this project. So it takes this really big kind of concepts and applies them and operationalizes them in a way I think folks can better understand, especially since this is a very much new industry here in the United States. So next slide. Before I even really get into the nuts and bolts of it, I do want to highlight our core values, and that's something that I always like to highlight before speaking about anything that we're doing, because I think this gives a frame of reference to how we operate as a joint venture. Our core values are safety, environmental responsibility, leading with science, and being a good neighbor. And for me, being a good neighbor is perhaps my favorite one, although the other three are also very important. But as a joint venture, I think, you know, when we're entering the different spaces and the different communities, it's really incumbent upon us to be a good neighbor. And, you know, I think you'll hear me kind of echo that through this presentation. So next slide. So as I mentioned before, in June of 2021, the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities awarded us the contract specifically 1,510 megawatts of offshore wind energy. And we like to frame it up as about 700,000 homes. And that's just that one part of our project. Next slide. And I say one part because as you can see on the graphic, that area in the outline, that is the full leasing area. The area that is that bluish teal color is the part that we're actually under review and we're approved by the BPU to do work on. We acquired that lease area in 2018 from BOEM, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. And, you know, the project will be about a total of under 200,000 acres with all of the turbines being approximately 9 to 20 miles off the New Jersey coast. Next. So talking about project one, located in the western 54,000 acres of the lease area, will include up to 136 turbines. Next slide. And then I wanted to go through the project one description timeline because this begins to illustrate the opportunities for industry and economy during these projects. So as you can see in the phase that we are in now, we're in the developmental phase. We're doing the surveys and the engineering, the federal and state permitting, the commercial agreements, construction, and OAM building. So those highlight the different roles and availability to different entities and business and vendors. We need surveying and engineering vendors, and that can be marine surveying and land surveying, assistance with federal and state permitting, commercial agreements, and then construction, right? And one thing that kind of pops into my head when we're in this phase that we're currently in is, we do things like visibility. So we had a visibility open house about, I want to say last week or the week before, and we actually have to work with a company that does that type of work. We worked with EDR to do that type of surveying work, and that is, again, an intersection of our business having to solicit work from other entities. And as you move through the timeline, you can see that, there'll be financing, there'll be start of manufacturing, there'll be the directional drilling at landfall, coastal construction, then there'll be on-shore transmission construction, offshore substation construction, export cable, wind turbine and offshore substation foundations, inter-array cables, substations ready for interconnection, and then at the very end, wind turbines installation and commissioning. So as you can see through the course and the lifetime of this project, or the timeline of this project, there are definitely places where entities or developers like Atlantic Shores are going to need the support and be able to pay vendors for their work to support this project. Next slide. So why is Atlantic Shores good for New Jersey? Again, I think it's really important to be a good neighbor. Next slide. So for I like to make a joke about it that New Jersey has the ideal conditions of offshore wind with consistent, strong wind speed off the coast. I like to make the joke that if you've ever been to New Jersey or ever interacted with someone from New Jersey, we got a lot of hot air, we got a lot of wind, we got a lot of things to keep wind turbines going. And just want to highlight that. It's a little tongue-in-cheek thing. I am born and raised from New Jersey, so I can attest to that. Next slide. So the wind energy from Atlantic Shores Project 1 will help reduce New Jersey's net greenhouse gas emissions by approximately 3.9 million tons. So if you think about it, and I really appreciate the fact that it breaks it down further, it's about 770,000 or more cars. So just from the energy aside, which is great, there's also the emissions reduction and the climate change and health aspects, and the importance of wind energy. Next slide, please. So economic development, right? Because that's what we're really here for. So our overall objectives and vision, we have a direct in-state commitment of $848 million. We are going to be building an O&M facility in New Jersey that will provide at least 88 long-term jobs. We will make use of the New Jersey wind port for marshaling and other New Jersey ports for other activities. So again, more jobs in the state. And we'll be making specific use of specific New Jersey facilities as part of our Project One. And we are also committed to assisting in building and training a New Jersey workforce, with specific focus with minority and women business enterprises, and union labor. So we have our wish list, or not our wish list because we're going to accomplish it, but the floor. And I was like, it's the floor, it's not the ceiling. So we're always looking to build on it. So next slide. So as part of that $848 million that we are committed to investing in the state, we are looking at about just over 22,000 direct jobs in construction operations, maintenance, transportation, manufacturing, professional services. We are also looking at the indirect jobs that will be created as a result of that, utilizing our local suppliers and manufacturing facilities. And we imagine that we will create at least $1.9 billion in guaranteed local economic benefit. And that will also be inclusive of things like induced jobs. So as there are more people and there are more places for people to work, they're going to need places to shop, they're going to need places to eat. So there is that kind of induced job as well. So next slide, please. And we're also looking to invest in New Jersey's workforce, and really kind of cultivate and reinforce research and innovation. As I mentioned before, and I'm sure you've heard frequently, that in the state of New Jersey, the offshore wind industry is a new industry. So in order to make sure this is an industry that lasts a very long time and will continue on, we need to be building a local workforce. And a lot of developers, including Atlantic Shores, is looking to do just that. So we're looking at, providing grants to minority and women-owned businesses, as I mentioned before, and we'll be working with Rutgers University Eco Complex. So I'll let Serpil really get into that. We have union training partnerships. We've partnered with 6 local unions to use union work where possible. We are developing university research grants, and we have committed to several initiatives. And we're also doing environmental research funding. So we'll be investing $35 million towards innovation, workforce development, academic institutions, as well as $15.1 million for environmental research and wildlife monitoring. So next slide. So we also have, in Atlantic City, we also have an educational community outreach center. And it is our primary location that we will be hosting local events for the communities, any upcoming offshore wind development plans. It is just it's our headquarters, or maybe not our headquarters, but it is our community headquarters here in the state, and it's in Atlantic City, and which is one of our landfall sites for our Project One. So we're really excited. It opened just prior to COVID, and unfortunately, due to COVID, we were unable to really host a lot of things. But as we were coming out of COVID, although recognition that it is still around, we are able to start planning things and more activities out of that center. So, please, you find yourself in the Atlantic City area, and we're having an event, please come check it out. So next slide, and I think that might be the last one. Yeah, so I just want to kind of wrap that up. I also wanted to respect my little 8-minute time to speak, and I hope I did. So yeah, so happy to answer any questions, or happy to turn it over to Serpil. And
Crystal, stick around with us, because we're going to come back to you with questions. And this is what I was talking about earlier. I love the action that you guys are taking. The blue economy is a great place to invest. Every dollar invested in the blue economy turns out $5 worth of economic and social benefits to the local area. So it's a great thing to be doing. So if you'll stay with us, then we'll all get together with Serpil in a few minutes. And for those of you in the audience, if you will post your questions where it says questions, not in the chat, then I'll be monitoring those and we'll be able to pull your questions up. We do, if we get very, very technical questions, go ahead and write it in. But what we'll do with those is come back at the end of the session and invite you to stay after for a little post time, and then we'll get to those questions. So I'm very excited to introduce Serpil Goran, Director of Rutgers Eco Complex Clean Energy Innovation Center, which we mentioned earlier. So Serpil, welcome, and tell us your story.
Thank you so much, Dean. And so hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm in Europe, and so it's late afternoon here. And if there is any background noise or if there is any Wi-Fi problems, I will apologize. Please excuse me. Yes, my speech title is Rutgers Wind Ignite Accelerator Program, which we recently launched in collaboration with Atlantic Shores. And because this program especially is being tailored currently to support offshore wind industry and also supporting the blue economy. Next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just a quick summary about my center that I lead since 2011. We rebranded this center since 2011 because Eco Complex is a business incubator center, university-based business incubator center, and we've been helping so many innovators, startups since its inception in 2000, but especially since 2011, we are serving as Clean Energy Innovation Center. And currently we have 7 startup companies under our roof. And because we are lucky and because we are utilizing or harnessing research and education resources from university, and also how can we develop and commercialize innovative clean energy technologies. Next slide, please. Thank you. I would like to start with our Governor Phil Murphy's statement regarding offshore wind, because he states that it's a once in a generation opportunity. I would like to echo that. It's very, very important because New Jersey is so lucky to have, rather, as Crystal mentioned, we have strong and steady state wind supply, offshore wind supply, and it is going to help. We are so hopeful that it is going to help, our state economy and also is going to support our climate change mitigation efforts in the state. And not only New Jersey, but multiple states within the region, we are trying to become a hub, hub of supply chain. And so when you're trying to install large wind turbines, and you need to have a strong supply chain for manufacturing turbine blades to other, other components, and also installing the turbines. Next slide, please. Next one, please. Thank you. Just to quickly summarize, a little bit facts with New Jersey and offshore wind. Crystal mentioned that about the latest, their, part of their project, Atlantic Shores project, is going to support more than 700,000 homes. But New Jersey has a total capacity target for 7,500 megawatt by 2033. And recent project, in fact, in combination with Atlantic Shores and Ørsted's combination, is going to be more than 2,600 megawatt. So New Jersey's offshore wind strategic plan, you can find, I copied and pasted the report. So if anyone is interested, then they can take a look at that. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, New Jersey is poised, and we are excited. And so we would like to be, as New Jersey is a strong player in the emerging offshore wind industry. And so, why is it important? We need a strong supply chain also, and we are positioning as Rutgers Eco Complex so that how can we support this effort? And so we are announcing this acceleration program in collaboration with Atlantic Shores, and we call it Wind Ignite. And so how can we make strong create a strong supply chain ecosystem? Next slide, please. Rutgers Eco Complex actually, very, experienced on innovation from startup to commercialization. So it will be, Wind Ignite will be located at the Eco Complex, and we will be supporting as a hub for innovative wind supply chain entrepreneurs ecosystem. But especially we are targeting, as Crystal mentioned also, women and minority-owned enterprises, because we believe in this is as also as it's a social justice era. In addition to clean and energy justice, in addition to environmental justice, we are trying to provide innovation justice to especially underrepresented parts of the community. We have two goals actually. When we are targeting women and minority-owned enterprises, it could be either existing small business that can be integrated into offshore wind supply chain, or it could be a new, research project that can be, from inception to commercialization. Next slide, please. Because from idea to commercialization, or innovation to invention to innovation, takes a village, as we say, because some ideas you have to have the concept assessment, you have to have the development and scale up, and also test and verification and launch. We always use this, these steps for, giving a push to any innovation in our under our ecosystem, and definitely we will apply this experience to offshore wind supply chain. And we will be creating a cohort, for example, for how can we bring those emerging innovators, startups, especially underrepresented parts of the community. Next slide, please. As everybody appreciates, its supply chain is an complex system, and as especially in the globalization concept, every component may come from somewhere. And why don't we create a good supply chain within the state, within the region? So it should create a good economy. It should stimulate the economy, blue economy / green economy. So we will, again, I mentioned earlier that we will utilize a network of resources, and so that they can successfully maneuver into innovation pathway. And as I mentioned again, we will use those, testing and then scaling up. And so it could be either services, it could be even certain goods. And it was reported that more than 190 types of goods or services can involve with offshore wind technology. So it is very important that existing and emerging companies should be integrated. So it's going to create an economic development. Next slide, please. Obviously, this is a new concept, offshore wind technology, our existing companies, small businesses, how can we have them to participate? And we are trying to create a growth in participation. Also, how can we timely and effectively integrate these existing businesses and competitiveness? So most of the developers are coming from abroad, and so how can we achieve competitiveness so that our small companies can be more competitive? How can we tailor existing small and mid-sized relative businesses to be competitive? And so they have to be timely delivering their goods and services. Obviously, maybe cost competitiveness is very important, and also quality of the service and the product is so important. So we will be heavily talking and teaching and working with existing and emerging companies so that they can be strong players for the ecosystem. Excuse me. I'm on the ship. I should have taken a glass of water. We have to, excuse me. We have to stimulate the local economy. So, next slide, please. Basically, I have to wrap up. Thanks for your information, attention.
Well, Serpil, thank you so much for that. And I've definitely got some questions for you while you catch your breath there. And Crystal, can you join us back on with your video? We've got some questions. Hey, so, you know, I mentioned that the investment in the blue economy, blue-green economy, five times return on investment. Talk about the investments that you're seeing and what's going on there in New Jersey with this.
Is that to both of us or me specifically? Sorry.
Was to you specifically.
Okay.
Well, Serpil recovered, but
No, happy to buy time to get Serpil some recovery time. So in terms of investment, you know, as I went through the slide deck, kind of touched on some of the economic development that we're working on. There is an investment in working with institutions of higher learning. So, you know, the partnership with Rutgers Eco Complex, sorry. There is, you know, work that, you know, we've partnered up with Stockton University that they're actually housing our Eco Center, which is the center I said that, you know, we'll be having education and community activities out of in Atlantic City. You know, we're going to be working with Rowan on some workforce development. So there is, you know, the institutions of higher learning in terms of the education and training and certification. We're doing investments in local efforts like the Barnegat Bay Partnership. We're also just kind of exploring other things that may not seem intuitively connected to offshore wind, but fall into kind of our being a good neighbor. So investing in local communities and local community organization like the Boys and Girls Club, making sure that we're sponsoring and participating in any kind of local initiatives that speaks to the needs of a neighborhood. And that's really one of my primary focuses is, you know, in addition to working with the local chambers and the regional chambers and any kind of professional organizations and being a supporter or sponsoring, it's also helping the rest of the EA team, their external affairs team, those who focus on the community and industry engagement, to connect with those partners in the state and the community where we can be working together. So, you know, our view as Atlantic Shores is that the development of our project is more than just, you know, the turbines and the cables and the electricity, but it's how we integrate into the state. And that can take different forms. Yes, the technical and the science and the engineering, but it's also the human impact of, you know, how we're engaging with the community, how we're educating the community, and how we're investing in the community. So I hope that touched on your question.
I think so. That's really good. We have a question from Kathy Sakas for both of you. But specifically for Atlantic shores, what have been the biggest hurdles to overcome? But then nationwide, Serpil, as municipalities and states start looking at these kind of projects, as investors start to get them, what are the real hurdles for getting these built?
So I can go to talk about some of the hurdles. So I think, and this is something that will impact any kind of developer. I think their supply chain, right? You know, COVID did do a number on, you know, our supply chain and our ability to get materials and things that we need. I think, you know, also big picture related to kind of procurement and supply chain is international conflicts. You know, especially with working as a part of a joint venture between two kind of multinational companies, is navigating the geopolitical things happening, especially with things happening in the Ukraine, and kind of navigating the kind of political stuff. But more closer to home, I guess it would say it's just any kind of bureaucratic hurdles. I won't say that's an obstacle, it's a cost of doing business, but navigating the different levels of government and making sure that everyone is on the same page and understands what is happening. So for us, it's really important to be transparent. It's really important to be meeting with key officials on the very local municipal level very early on. It's important to be engaging with the state. It's important to be engaging with the federal government, so we can just always be going back and forth. But as far as like what our hurdles have been, it's, you know, it's new, right? It's new, and it creates changes off the coast of New Jersey. And, you know, some communities, some people really struggle with the idea of those changes. But, you know, nothing, you know, like it changes. I mean, that's the one constant, right? Change. So kind of addressing those concerns, you know, meeting them with empathy, but also education, and kind of recognizing that, you know, there is also an issue of, you know, not an issue, but visibility. Yeah, sometimes you'll see them, but a lot of times you won't see them, right? Or if you do see them, they'll soon be integrated into kind of what it's always looked like, right? Like there is a such thing as kind of like blindness to it, and it's not necessarily the end of the world. It's just going to be different, and hopefully getting folks over that hurdle of it will look different, and reducing that fear of that unknown difference. I guess it's a really polite way.
That's great. No, that was very polite. Serpil, how about you? What are you seeing in terms of hurdles to projects like this?
Thank you. As Crystal mentioned, it's new. We're trying to understand. I mean, we have been working with so many different clean energy technology startups. And so, for example, electric battery, electric vehicle battery recycling, or any other technology. So we're trying to see the needs, first of all, those young companies, young innovators, and also existing ones. In any company, if they can be a part of this supply chain, because Crystal is an expert on this matter, but so there are 100, maybe almost 200 types of businesses can involve with this, from engineering design to you know, cable production to maybe you know, boat operators, maybe you know, any jobs or any businesses, they can be part of this ecosystem. So, but also existing those, you know, transitioning existing companies that they can move into this sector, but also young innovators, scientific new you know, developments, maybe some electronics, and so new innovations in electronics, maybe communications, maybe app designs, you name it. So we will be monitoring. We already started monitoring who is who, and who are they, and then what are the, you know, what is their need, the existing needs. And so that's why also I'm working with also our business school professors. So basically they will be helping us to how to help them in their businesses, because sometimes scientists may not know how to write a business plan, right? Especially young innovators, or you name it. So we will be helping, and we will be doing hand-holding, basically, so some young companies, and especially, as I mentioned, minority companies.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So it's going to be
Yeah.
a lot of discoveries will happen, hopefully. Yeah.
Right, and if I could add on to that, and you know, and I have to put my frame of reference. My frame of reference is very much always on the development side, so like just trying to get the projects moving through the timeline, and then at some point, you know, the technical teams start stepping up and so on and so forth. But I think Serpil also highlighted a potential obstacle to your point, Dan, is that, you know, and I touched on it before when we talked about workforce and training, is that we have to get a workforce. So, you know, that's why, you know, a lot of folks are just like, you keep talking about the jobs. What are these specific jobs, and you're not telling us what the jobs are. But it's just like, we're working on that, and we're trying to engage you in that too, because we are building an industry, right? We are building this industry. We are, you know, we are, I forgot what the analogy is, but like, you know, we're building the runway as we're taking off, right? So, you know, there is that, and I don't want to say it's necessarily an obstacle or a difficulty. I think it's a necessity in any type of new industry, but there's the kind of folks are just like, well, where are those jobs? And it's just like, well, we have to train for those jobs. We have to develop the certifications. We got to do all this stuff, and you know, we're not hiding it from you. As soon as it happens, you know, everyone's going to be aware. And I think that's why all of the developers are really focused on, you know, things like incubators and different supportive investments and workforce training and connecting with the unions to start getting that foundation. So that is something I also wanted to flag. So sorry.
We have a question from Rip Cole, who asks, where does environmental monitoring before, during, or after turbine installation fall into the planning of this in New Jersey? Is it in situ or modeling efforts? This is usually a critical component.
So, and I don't want to go too far over my skis on this, because I am not the member of the team that handles a lot of this, but I can say as part of, you know, Bureau of Ocean Management, or BOEM, before they do their own work to identify appropriate parcels of the shelf or the ocean, and they do their own studies to kind of identify, you know, impacts, appropriateness for these parcels of lease areas that they go and allow for bidding. And then as far as our construction's operation plan, you know, the developers, Atlantic Shores, have to do a series of environmental impacts, environmental justice impacts, and all of that is actually public record. It's on the BOEM website. You can see it's called a construction operations plan. It's about 6,000 pages. It's got a really good table of contents. You can go to specifically what you want to see, but it has all of the studies that have been completed, and that does speak to marine animals. It speaks to you know, aviation or birds. It speaks to all of those things, and then obviously during the course of, you know, as we move the project forward, there is going to be a responsibility of kind of the marine management and checking on things. And, you know, we work with Rutgers again, the ocean sciences, to do like a lot of work with them and using LIDAR. And, you know, we've done studies with the red knots, which is a migratory bird that, you know, travels, you know, thousands of miles and cuts through New Jersey. And those are all those types of studies that we are obligated and want to do, because the last thing we want to do is negatively impact
The environment.
The environment. We don't want to be clean energy that negatively impacts.
Well, so there's another kind of community impact, and we have a question from the audience on this, and that's truck traffic. How are you going to mitigate that, you know, the impacts that happen to the community and community opposition with a wind port?
So again, you know, I would say out of fairness, that type of conversation is probably best steered to the New Jersey EDA, Economic Development Authority, who is heading the wind part. I mean, I can say that when in my previous role with the Board of Public Utilities, EDA hosted kind of a workshop or roundtable on kind of the environmental justice and diversity impacts related to the wind port. And I know that was part of conversations of being aware of the increase of truck traffic and what that means to those communities that will be impacted. But I believe that out of complete fairness that, you know, saying what Atlantic Shores can do isn't, I don't want to say it's not appropriate, but I don't think it's realistic. It's not the appropriate answer to the question being asked, right? But I think it is a valid question, and I think it's something that we as a team in Atlantic Shores try and think about. And I mentioned there's like an environmental justice assessment they did for the construction operation plan, but it is something that we're thinking about, like how do we mitigate the impact of, you know, these additional trucks, right? Like what can we be doing? And you know, those conversations are still happening.
Of course.
But I would refer that person to, you know, really pose those questions to the EDA. I don't want to sidestep, but it's ultimate. The wind port is under their purview, so
Yeah,
and it's not just us there.
The last webcast we had, we featured Crowley Maritime, which is a company which is working to service offshore wind farms, and particularly specifically with a new ship that they're launching that is zero emissions and an electrically powered boat. So that certainly helps, as you don't have a lot of ships coming into the port. We are at the limit of our time. Millie, do you want to say anything to close?
God, I lost track of time. It was so good. Thank you both. This is awesome. And it is the future. And I encourage everyone, you can go back and see a prior webcast we did with Crowley, because they talk about their piece of this. And there are a lot of pieces and parts that have to come together to make all this work. Anyway, we have another webcast that will happen in a quarter. I want to thank Dane. He's fabulous. He is an Ocean Exchange partner at our event, and he's agreed to help us with these webcasts. We started in 2020, and then we partnered with MTS in 2021, and we've continued it. And they are fantastic, and he has a whole team behind him, and we thank them all. Next slide. Here's that next session, September 28th. We'll be announcing the content of that. Just mark your calendar today. You see some other links here if you want to know more about Ocean Exchange and MTS. Next slide. Thanks to MTS partnering with us. Thanks to our sponsors. These are major sponsors here. You can go back to our website and see the others that support us. This is just a small list. Give us feedback. We've adapted and adjusted things over, 2.5 years now based on your feedback. So I'd love to hear from you. Next slide. And then thanks to our panelists, you guys have been great. I know Serpil for a number of years. Crystal, great to get to know you, and I'm going to find some time to follow up with you. Both of our organizations here have people behind the scenes. You see them listed. Couldn't do it without them. I know that's an overused phrase. It's true. We could not do it without them. If you're curious about prior webcasts, you can find them on both Ocean Exchange, MTS websites. We curate them there. Thank you all very, very much. See you in 90 days.
Bye-bye. Thank you.